He's an internationally respected leadership authority, consultant, and author of several acclaimed books, including The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which has sold more than 15 million copies in 38 languages. It was chosen the most influential business book of the 20th century by Chief Executive Magazine. He is vice chairman of Franklin Covey and co-founder, and he has made teaching principle-centered leadership his life's work. He's consulted with CEOs, political leaders, heads of state, as well as managers and employees at literally thousands of organizations throughout the world. Many Fortune 500 and 100 companies have adopted his innovative leadership and management techniques within their organizations. His work has also influenced countless individuals who have integrated his ideas into their personal lives. So without further ado, I shall introduce Dr. Stephen R. Covey.
Thrilled to see you all. And I'm excited with this opportunity. And maybe we can interact a little later. I want to try to create a context for what I'm going to present. And this little film called The Whole Person Paradigm is foundational to that context. If you study the structure of scientific revolutions, the book, you'll find that basically it teaches every significant breakthrough is a break with an old paradigm, an old way of thinking. George Washington died of bloodletting. He had 12 pints of blood taken from his body. They thought he had a throat infection, but it was the accepted paradigm of the day, even after the germ theory had been discovered. In every field of human endeavor, the great breakthroughs were break with old paradigms or ways of thinking. This little film illustrates 4 different paradigms. One for the hunters and gatherers, one for the farmers, one for the industrial age, and one for was called by Peter Drucker the knowledge worker economy. So I'd like to show this to begin with. This helps create an overall context for what I'm going to present. We stand at the forefront of one of the most exciting and promising of all of the ages of human history. The globalization of markets, the exploding advances of technology have created an unprecedented opportunity for growth and prosperity, for individuals, for families, for organizations, for all society, if we approach them wisely. I frequently ask large audiences, how many agree that the vast majority of the workforce in your organization possess far more talent, capability, creativity, and intelligence than their present jobs require or even allow them to use? The overwhelming majority of people raise their hands, and this is with groups all over the world. About the same percentage acknowledge that they are under immense pressure to produce more for less. I mean, just think about it. On the one hand, people face a new and increasing expectation to produce more for less, yet feel that they are not even allowed to contribute their highest talents and intelligence. This is a staggering and fundamental leadership problem. To understand why, we need to understand the four economic ages of civilization. Imagine for a moment that you step back in time and you are a hunter and gatherer of food. Each day you go out and gather food for your family. That's all you've ever known. Then someone comes along and tries to persuade you to become what he calls a farmer. You see him scratch the earth, throw little seeds into the ground. You see him watering the soil, removing weeds, and you see nothing. But eventually, you see a great harvest. You notice his yield as a farmer is 50 times greater than yours as a hunter and gatherer. What would you do? Little by little, you would go through the intense learning process of becoming a farmer. You would need to learn new skills and use new tools. Ultimately, you would raise your children and grandchildren as farmers. And that's exactly what happened in our early history. In time, we experienced more than a 90% downsizing of hunters and gatherers. Then along comes the industrial age. People build factories and learn how to take raw materials through an assembly line with high levels of efficiency. They had to develop a whole new set of skills. The factory of the industrial age produced 50 times more than the family farm. And over time, over 90% of the farmers were downsized. Now we're moving into the information knowledge worker age. Do you believe that this age will outproduce the industrial age 50 times? I do. We're just barely beginning to see it. It will outproduce it 50 times, not twice, not 3 or 10 times, but 50 or more. You see, the primary drivers of economic prosperity in the industrial age were machines and capital. In other words, things. People were necessary but replaceable. The problem is, although we are living in the knowledge worker age, so many of our modern management practices come from the industrial age. It's reflected in many of our current recruiting, hiring, and firing practices, our performance appraisal systems, our compensation and reward systems, even in the way we communicate with people. Financial accounting, the main information guiding system, comes out of the industrial age and calls people an expense. And things like tools, equipment, computers, assets. Just think about the impact of that psychology on almost everything. With the industrial age approach, people are managed to a job description. They're fit into a slot. In the knowledge worker age, people are led toward their greatest unique contribution. The industrial age manager sees people as employees or subordinates. Motivation is external. Carrot and sticking. You know, if you produce, you get the carrot. If you don't produce, you get the stick. The great jackass theory of human motivation. In the knowledge worker age, people are treated as volunteers, as associates and partners. The industrial age mindset is one of control, controlling people. The knowledge worker mindset is one of release, a form of directed autonomy. Bottom line, we manage things, but things don't have the power to choose. But we lead people who do have the power to choose. Speaking of our day, the late, brilliant management thinker Peter Drucker said prophetically, when the history of our time is written, the most important event those historians will remember is not technology, not the internet, not e-commerce, but the unprecedented change in the human condition. For the first time, substantial and rapidly growing numbers of people have choices. For the first time, people have to manage themselves, and we are totally unprepared for it. Why are we unprepared? Because unleashing the potential of this age will require a fundamental break from the control paradigm. It will require leaders to embrace what I call the whole person paradigm. Human beings are four-dimensional. Our body, our mind, our heart, and our spirit. These four dimensions also represent the four basic needs and motivations of all people. For the body, to live, survival. For the heart, to love, to build strong relationships. For the mind, to learn, the need for growth and development. And for the spirit, to leave a legacy, the need for meaning and contribution, and for integrity. Consciously or subconsciously, people choose how much of themselves that they will give to their work, depending on how they are viewed and treated, and on their opportunities to use all four parts of their nature. The point is, neglect any one of the four parts of human nature, and you essentially turn a person into a thing. And what do you do with a thing? You have to control and manage them in order to motivate them. Again, carrot and stick. You may be able to buy someone's hand or back, but you can never buy someone's heart, mind, and spirit. These are volunteered only. In the final analysis, leadership is not about control. It's about unleashing the whole person toward compelling, inspiring, and worthwhile goals. As a leader, you have a choice. You can choose to perpetuate the practices of the industrial age, or to adopt the mindset, skill set, and tool set required to lead successfully in the knowledge worker age. Here's kind of a breakdown of the difference between the knowledge worker age and the industrial age. The overall philosophy is control. If you're a kind dictator, it's called kind control. The overall philosophy of the knowledge worker age is to unleash talent. Leadership is formal authority based on position. Leadership is moral authority. Gandhi was the leader of the largest democracy in the world and the founder of India. He never held a position. Totally based on moral authority. That means he lived by principles and had a great transcendent purpose and goal. The culture is boss-centered. The culture in the knowledge worker age is a complementary team, meaning strengths are productive and weaknesses are made irrelevant to the strengths of other people. Almost like a choral group where the sopranos don't try to take the place of the bass or the tenors or the altos. Their own strength is being utilized and their weakness is being compensated for by the strengths of other people. Also, servant leadership. The greatest is the servant of all. So they learn to align structures and systems, to nurture a principle-centered approach. People are expenses rather than the highest leveraging asset. We're still using an obsolete accounting system. Motivation is external rather than internal. Management, the boss owns responsibility for results, therefore manages and motivates. The key is to get people to manage themselves based on timeless and universal principles that are taught everywhere in the world. I was on a satellite to China the other day, and they asked, how does this apply to a Confucius country? I said, do you believe in fairness? Absolutely. Do you believe in kindness? Certainly. Do you believe in the unleashing of human potential? It's fundamental. Do you believe that we should serve transcendent purposes and needs and goals? Absolutely. That's all I'm teaching. These are timeless, universal principles. Voice. People are voiced. It's the primary leveraging asset. Let's put up what voice means. 4 overlapping circles. What you're good at, your talent. What you love doing, your passion. What your conscience tells you to do, that's your internal voice. And then what the need is. When they overlap, that's giving people personal significance. The key to leadership, put up this quotation on leadership, is to communicate people's worth and potential so clearly they are inspired to see it in themselves. And particularly if you set up a complementary team where strengths are made productive and weaknesses are made irrelevant to the strengths of others. Now, the paradigm that I attempt to teach everywhere I go is the overlapping of 3 circles: personal greatness, leadership greatness, and organizational greatness. If you don't have structures and systems to reinforce the principles, you will not have a sustainable culture. These are the 4 imperatives of leadership. Inspire trust, clarify purpose, align systems to serve that purpose and those strategic goals that flow from it, and then to unleash talent, to inspire people to find their voice. So when you hire somebody, always ask them, what have you loved doing that you've done well? How many of you here in this audience feel like you found your voice? It's like half the group. Usually it's about 20% of a group, seriously. And I asked that 20%, how much supervision do you require? None. They love doing it. They're good at it. Their conscience tells them to do it. See, supervision itself is an obsolete concept. It pertains to the industrial age. This applies also to a family. Here's a picture of our family. My wife Sandra would love to have joined us, but she's had a back operation and is in a wheelchair right now. Now this is as of 5 years ago. We have about 8 more people since then. We have 84 in our family now. No other success can compensate for failure in the home. None. No matter what kind of accumulation, the key contribution you make is to your family. This is our family mission statement. It basically means we serve God by serving others. The ethic of service is what we're all about. And every time I meet a grandchild, I say, how do you like to serve your brother and your parent? your mother or your father? I don't. But little by little, they grow up in a culture that values the supremacy of service. And we've organized our families so that each person takes responsibility for different service projects. Even grandchildren are involved in this. And little by little, the ethic of service begins to pervade the whole family culture. Now, if you go back to the two lists, I had the opportunity to visit with Nelson Mandela. He got his moral authority in Robben Island prison. And I asked him, how long did it take for you to get off the bitterness you had toward those who were torturing you and punishing you? It took about 4 years. What happened? I saw how they treated each other, how they talked about each other. And I realized these are good people. I saw them differently. See, he changed his paradigm, his perception. Let me show you how fast perceptions are formed. I'll show one picture to this side of the room and a different picture to this side of the room. And then a third picture to everyone. Okay? Please don't try to sneak a peek at the picture you shouldn't look at. So the first picture I'll show to this side of the room. So over here, would you close your eyes and put your head down? Okay, put the picture up. Okay, the next picture I'll show to this side of the room. Over here. So look up over here and over here. Put your heads down and close your eyes. Put the picture up. Okay, now the third picture I'll show to everybody. So everyone look up. Put the picture up. Take it down. When you saw this third picture, how many thought it was a saxophone player? Look where most of the hands are. That side of the room. How many thought it was a woman? Look where most of the hands are. See, that conditioning lasted 1 second. And it splits a room in half. Shows you how powerful paradigms are. Now, do what you need to do to see them both. Talk to anyone you want to. Go ahead. Put the third picture up again. How many see them both? You see, all that takes is a very short explanation by another person. And then you question your own paradigm. We don't see the world as the world is. We see the world as we are. You put that expression. Our perceptions create a world. They drive our behavior. Okay, let's go back to the 3 circles. Unless you institutionalize into the structure and systems and processes of an organization, it will not sustain itself. Those alignment issues are very, very significant. You could even work on personal greatness, which is more inside out. But if you don't work on leadership greatness and organizational greatness, it will not be sustainable. Let's look at the 7 habits for a second. When I worked on this over a period of about 20 years, I studied the literature in our country showing the movement from the character ethic to the personality ethic, where people are more focused on image and technique than they are on living by deep integrity. When man found the mirror, he began to lose his soul. The point is, he became more concerned with his image than with himself. It's the cultural DNA that overlays the spiritual DNA inside of us that robs us of our identity. It isn't when someone takes our wallet and uses our credit cards. That's a very superficial approach to the identity theft. The real identity theft is the cultural DNA, which obliterates or obscures the deep natural and spiritual DNA inside ourselves, and causes people to constantly compare themselves to other people so that their sense of self comes from the social mirror, not from deep within themselves. One of the 3 of the most significant sentences I found in a book over in Hawaii. And these are those 3. Between stimulus and response is a space. In that space lies your freedom and power to choose your response. In those responses lie our growth and our happiness. I went back to find the author who said this, and the library wasn't there. I wanted to give credit. This is the way I diagram it. Stimulus response. Between what happens to us and our response to it, including our genes, our environmental issues, our deeply embedded tendencies, and our response is our freedom to choose the response. It's made up of these 4 unique human endowments that animals do not have. Self-awareness means you can stand apart from your life and examine it. Imagination, you can create something that is not yet present, never has been present. Conscience, the inward voice that tells you what's right. And then independent will, the power to act on it, so that a person could swim against very powerful genetic and cultural tendencies. Little by little, this is what happens to the space between stimulus and response. It gets larger and larger and larger. And this is what's necessary in a knowledge worker economy. To have people who are at the cutting edge in a business, to have the creative energy to produce that large of a response, that large of a space. This is why meditation is so tremendously valuable and important in our lives, because all 4 unique human endowments are drawn into it. self-awareness, imagination, conscience, and independent will. I noticed this chart back here talking about the source of invincibility. It's the person. It's an inside-out approach. It's not an outside-in approach. It makes the person invincible so that they are not powerfully disrupted by external forces, by outside forces. Let's look again at that little diagram and the 4 unique human endowments, which animals do not possess. See, the body, mind, heart, and spirit always is involved. To live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. To matter, to contribute. The key is not accumulation. It's contribution. A deep sense of stewardship toward life. Now, put up the 7 habits once more. Notice the private victory precedes the public victory. In other words, it's an inside-out approach. The first 3 habits represent the private victory. You take initiative and responsibility. That's habit 1, to be proactive. Habit 2, you develop a mission, a purpose, and a vision statement. That's why I encourage everyone to develop a personal mission statement and a family mission statement, as well as organizational mission statements and team mission statements. And then you live by it. Habit 3. That produces integrity. Until people have this kind of internal security and integrity, they cannot win the public victory. Because they'll tend to think win-lose, or they'll become martyrs and think lose-win. And they'll tend not to listen in depth, empathically, within the frame of reference of other people. And they won't be able to produce third alternative solutions, which is synergy. Synergize. I'm doing a book right now on the third alternative, and represents 10 other books I'm working on, including a book on crime, showing that crime can be reduced 85 to 90% if you change 2 paradigms: prevention rather than treatment, and partnership, so that the police give more positive tickets than they do negative tickets. And the culture changes, so it becomes cool to be good, even to turn in bad guys. I'm also showing how universities and colleges can trim tab. That's the small rudder that turns the big rudder that turns an entire community or nation. And they can help fashion a mission statement and a value system for the entire community. The key is cultural empowerment, really, is to empower an entire culture by involving that culture in the issues and the challenges and the problems that the culture faces, and to develop a principle-centered mission statement and purpose that the community is trying to achieve. I'm doing another book for attorneys called Blessed Are the Peacemakers. Those who train and hire attorneys. And it's all based, and my co-author on that book is a federal judge. that hardly ever goes to, here it is, trial. Because he resolves the issue using Indian talking stick communication in chambers. Now, unless people have won the private victory and have a deep sense of peace, serenity, and creativity inside themselves, they cannot win the public victories. This Indian talking stick was given to me by Indian chiefs after training them. The ones that run the Indian nations in North America, that's the Mexico, United States, and Canada. The Inuit tribe and the First Nations tribe up in Canada. And there's scores and scores of tribes in the United States and also in Mexico. And the concept is very simple. You always give the talking stick first to the other person. Imagine the amount of personal security and invincibility that that person must have to give the talking stick first to the other person. And until you can restate that person's point to his or her satisfaction, he will not give it back to you. As soon as you do, he returns it. Now, as this passes back and forth, what happens is defensive energy is lowered and creative energy is sponsored and nurtured. And then they create a third alternative. This can be done on almost any issue. It can be done in a marriage. It can be done in family life. It's foundational to produce third alternative solutions, because you saw what happened when I showed these pictures. It literally takes in about 90% of the cases and splits a room in half with 1 second of conditioning. Put up the listening continuum, please. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. See, most people pretend to listen. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Or they may even listen attentively, but they're still within their own frame of reference. Unless a person has enough personal security and integrity inside their life, in the way they're living true to their value system, their conscience, they cannot listen empathically. That is within the other person's frame of reference, but Indian talking stick communication necessitates that. By the way, the Indian chiefs of the Iroquois Federation in the northeast part of the United States taught this to the founding fathers. I think that powerfully impacted the inspired work on the Constitution of the United States, which institutionalized principles so that everyone is accountable to it. Even the President of the United States. Put up the continuum of communication. See, synergy is the third alternative. You produce a third alternative that neither even thought about before. Compromise is respectful communication. Okay, let's go halfway. Defensive communication and hostility, they both represent contention. Respectful communication is where 1 + 1 = 1.5. Synergistic communication, 1 + 1 can equal 3 or 10 or 100. This takes a transformation inside the culture. The other is transaction. And the first two are contention. Think what you're going to do tonight with your spouse. Have some form of an Indian talking stick communication and say, I can't say anything until you give it back. And you won't give it back until you feel deeply understood, not just on your point, but the context of that point. And you watch to see how creative energy that produces third alternatives substitute for defensive energy and contention and egoistic communication. That's what I mean by the private victory always comes first. The seventh habit is the renewal of the body, mind, heart, and spirit. This happens with individuals and with families. Do you want to put sharpening the saw up? It's the renewal of the private victory which produces the public victory. And basically it involves the development of the body through proper eating, exercise, the development of the mind through continual learning, turning the TV way down and reading way up, professional training and planning and education, the emotional, social, proactivity, that is the use of those four unique human endowments, relationship building and synergistic problem solving, and value clarification and recommitment, study and meditation. All of these represent sharpening the saw. The story is told of someone that comes up to someone else who's sawing down a tree and said, why don't you sharpen the saw? I'm too busy sawing, dum-dum. Unaware that by sharpening the saw, it saws faster and better, cleaner, more efficiently, more effectively. Meditation is foundational to all of this. And I'm sure that you understand that and value your meditative experiences as I do mine, twice a day. Okay, go to the 4 imperatives of leadership. You see, until you practice synergy, it's very difficult to exercise these 4 imperatives. To inspire trust, to clarify purpose, to align systems to serve that purpose, and to unleash talent. Really it is. That's why this inside-out approach with the 7 habits is so foundational. And also the constant effort to renew yourself through sharpening the saw. These are the 4 dysfunctional parts of most organizations. And we do consistent research with thousands of organizations. And here are the dysfunctionalities. The first is low trust. No clear purpose or vision. bureaucratic, misaligned systems, underutilized talent and potential. These are 4 chronic problems of organizations, and here are the symptoms of them. The high cost of low trust, 4 chronic problems: ambiguity, hidden agendas, political games, and chaos. Interdepartmental rivalry, codependency, clear hypocrisies, and resolvable misalignments. Apathy, moonlighting, daydreaming, boredom, escapism, anger, and fear. The evident symptoms is low productivity, low efficiency. When trust is high, speed goes down and costs go up. When trust is low, speed slows down and costs go up. I mean, imagine what would happen if we moved to a knowledge worker age model, to rules and regulations, to bureaucracies, hierarchies. Think of the costs that would be saved if you could eliminate most of that. And instead, teach people principles and let them govern themselves. Now let me show you the 4 disciplines of execution. This is a big part of our business. We're into 142 countries today and into literally thousands of organizations. The first discipline is to come up with WIGs, what we call wildly important goals. I was in Dubai the other day, and a crash took place at the airport, and we had to go down to Abu Dhabi to fly up to Amman, Jordan, where we trained the king and queen of Jordan and a large group of people. And so the wildly important goal was to land that plane safely. To a surgeon is to keep that person alive and to have a successful surgery. Then you act on the lead measures. That's the second discipline. The main forces that create the WIGs, the wildly important goals. And then you keep a compelling scoreboard and have a cadence of accountability so that formal leaders or bosses are accountable themselves to the team. You don't have the normal performance appraisal process where the boss evaluates another person once a year or something like that. This is done on a weekly basis. This is what I plan to do this week. This is what I did last week. And these are my intentions. That's a cadence of accountability. So everyone is accountable to a mission statement as interpreted by the culture of that organization, which is based on principles that are timeless and universal, and which also embodies a transcendent purpose that has a fair sense of stewardship, responsibility toward all stakeholders, customers, and so forth. Now, to do this, to accomplish this, you need to have information. The kind of information that you need is not just financial accounting, but XQ, which is cultural accounting, telling you whether or not the people understand because they have participated in and developed the strategic goals, which are in harmony with the transcendent purpose of the organization. this becomes enormously important. Put up XQ. It's an abbreviation for execution quotient. Gauges the organization's ability to execute its most important goals. 27 questions, accessible from any computer on the internet. 15 minutes. Results are anonymous, can't be traced. To get a free individual XQ sample, go to www.the8thhabit.com. You could even try it out. Try it with your own team. This is what the printout looks like. Here are the 4 execution gaps. Do you know that only about 20% of the people even understand what the strategic goals are, let alone being committed to them? Translation to action means how my role is connected to that strategic goal, which flows from the transcendent purpose of the organization. Enabling means the structures and systems and processes enable, not disenable. Synergy and accountability, so that everyone is accountable. I worked with China Lake for over 15 years. They produced about 90% of the armaments for the Navy, hundreds of billions of dollars. And they had a culture that I just described. They had these 4 imperatives of leadership. They practiced the 7 habits in order to develop that culture. And they had a principle-based organization. And everyone helped participate in coming up with those principles that are universal and timeless. And they were accountable. Everyone was accountable, including the formal leaders, to the culture. This is what I mean by cultural empowerment. A new head was appointed by Congress of China Lake, and he was part of the industrial age mindset, top-down command and control. He lasted 2 months. This comes out in 3 levels. Here's the team level. It gives the national average in the top 10%. The national average is about 50%. Top 10% is usually about 90%. That's 54. Our national average is 45. The top 10% is 89. Every time I get involved in this, everyone wants to be part of the top 10%. Literally. I have never seen an exception yet. And then they identify the different elements that produce this team level. It also comes at the organizational level. Here's the organizational level. There's 44, the national average 48, top 10% 92. Here is a country club trying to act like a business. This is at the individual level. '76, the national average 50, top 10% 85. You know, the greatest disinfectant in the world is light. It disinfects. This kind of information, not only financial accounting, but cultural accounting and net promoting score accounting, represents light information. And if you can't identify the source, it's usually very responsible and accurate. Light is the greatest disinfectant and growth agent. That's scoreboard information transparency. So you not only have financial accounting, but you also have cultural accounting and net promoting score. Let me put up net promoting score. This is what you use with your customers and your business partners. How likely is it you would recommend this product or service to a friend or colleague? 9s and 10s is what you're after. You know what the average is? About 3.5. People would easily move to another product or service. This was developed by Frederick Reichhold from the Harvard Business School. XQ was developed by Franklin Covey. With a lot of help from outside empirical researchers. So, if you're looking at financial accounting, cultural accounting, net promoting score with your customers and business partners, you've got a real foundation of light and information on which to make judgments. This becomes so important for people to make wise judgments. And if they have a mission statement that is based on universal and timeless principles, they make those judgments through that lens. Just 5 minutes for questions. Questions? I'll restate the questions so that everyone can hear it. Yes?
Can you put the website back up for the execution quotient?
Okay, can you put the website on, for the website, XQ? See, this gets at the heart of an organization. The net promoting score gets at the mind of an organization. Financial accounting gets at the body of the organization. Yes?
My question is sort of about the transition, because you're putting something that obviously looks like the ideal state. We all would like to be there. And then we go back in our organizations and we're in the reality of politics, inefficiency, all the stuff that. So how does one start to work to move one to the other? And I understand you start with within it with yourself, but then in a sense, if you're the first one to put down your armor, you can get slaughtered before any change happens.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm putting a little darker tones, but.
You ever heard of Kirk Lewin? He's a sociologist, and he's done a great deal of research on your question. And he developed the greatest change approach. It's called force field analysis. Put that up, please. Put up the simple one. It deals with both restraining forces that are usually cultural and emotional, and driving forces that are economic and logical. You want to go from a current level of 360 to a desired level where your vision is. And here are the forces that are operating. Personal, interpersonal, managerial, organizational. Here are the forces that are pushing up. What do you think the industrial age approach uses? Driving forces. They're almost all economic and logical. They're driving forces. The problem is, how many of you tried to lose weight 1,000 times in your life? What happens within a few months? You go back because you're just using driving forces. You're not dealing with cultural and emotional issues. The key is to turn driving forces into restraining forces. No, the key is to turn restraining forces into driving forces. Here it is for an organization. See, you want to go from the lower level. Can you put it for the organization? It's the next one on force field analysis. You want to go from where you are, based on a balanced scoreboard, to where you want to go, your vision. You want a high level of empowerment, cultural empowerment, people, self-control, abundance, synergy, rather than external control, which is the industrial age approach. And industrial age perceptions and paradigms are so deeply embedded in most organizations, seriously, that it's created a codependent culture, which means that I don't want to be empowered. I want you to take the responsibility. And they buy into it, and they produce the evidence that justifies their perception of the other person. That's what codependency means. So you're dealing with personal, interpersonal, managerial. See, you manage things, but you lead people. You inspire people. You uplift them. You affirm their worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. Now, the key is to turn restraining forces into driving forces. How do you do that? Involvement, transparency, openness, invincibility. You literally get people to participate in a very informal way in small groups on the strategic issues of the organization. And by looking at XQ as well as financial accounting, and by looking at net promoting score. And also a distinctive contribution, which represents the spirit of an organization. Can you put up the 4 desired results? Sustained superior performance measured through accounting. A winning culture of unleashed people measured through XQ. Loyal promoting customers and partners. A net promoting score and a distinctive contribution. That's the body, mind, heart, and spirit of an organization. And you need to have balance up there, and integration up there, and information from those 4 sources. Distinctive contribution is measured in a way that is distinctive to every organization. Like giving back to the community. I was in Japan the other day with an organization, and their distinctive contribution was to feed the children. Not just poor, impoverished children today or tomorrow, but next week, next month, in a sustainable way. And that was the most exciting part of the whole convention, were pictures of little children being fed. So there's the body, mind, heart, and spirit of an organization. Now, when that information comes to people and they discuss it in small, informal groups, that's when this cultural empowerment begins to take place. And people begin to take responsibility and to own responsibility, a sense of stewardship, to work on all 4 elements. See, all we do today is look at financial accounting, basically. Most organizations do. They don't look at XQ, they don't look at net promoting score, and distinctive contribution. These are the 4 elements of greatness. So if people are trained to think through principles and to see all of life through the lens of principles that are universal and timeless, and they meditate on those so that it becomes the frame of reference through which they make their value judgments, it powerfully impacts everything else that happens. Other questions? Yes. Mark.
Mind perhaps just giving your personal experience and what the value of meditation, of transcendental meditation in your life, if that's not too personal.
No, that's fine. Mark taught me TM several months ago before we went to Fairfield, Iowa, where they practice meditation. They have huge assemblies for men and women in the morning and at night. And it's a very interesting experience. He even gave me my mantra that I use to meditate through. But I've been meditating for many, many years. And my basic approach to meditation precedes prayer and is based all on the Savior and His leadership of my life and of my family's life. So, but TM became very interesting to me, and Mark trained me in it. And I've literally found that meditation is foundational to having my prayers efficacious, so that there is a two-way communication taking place. And through meditation, you tap into the four unique human endowments. You're standing apart from your life, so you're self-aware. You use your imagination and conscience, which is the essence of habit 2. And independent will is the essence of habit 3. You live by it, so that the integrity it produces gives you sufficient security that you can win public victories. So I'm a great believer in meditation and fascinated by the TM approach to it. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
To take financial accounting into empowerment financial accounting?
I think the reason why it's so hard to take financial accounting into empowerment is that it is so incomplete and imbalanced, because it has no cultural accounting there. You have no net promoting score there. And you don't have any information on distinctive contribution. So if you take a balanced approach, body, financial accounting, heart, cultural accounting, mind, strategic accounting, spirit, it gives you a lot more information to operate on so that you can understand the roots that produce the fruits in financial accounting. Yes, you wanted to say another word?
We seem to disassociate numbers from the spirit. There is this way to see numbers that is kind of completely apart from all those good things, those other good things that should be with numbers. It's what you presented about the photos and looking at it differently. Why not to look the numbers from a perspective, well, it's just, I am a little bit confused, as you can tell with this.
No, I can hear what you're saying. That there's two things. There's the numbers, and then there's the spirit that produces those numbers. And you really need the roots before you can get the fruits, the numbers. But all four of them have numbers. XQ has numbers. Net promoting score has numbers. And if you're going after 9s and 10s with your customers, you're adding really significant value, and that deeply increases customer loyalty to your products and services. Plus, you've got people at the cutting edge that are working directly with the customers who are very empowered and are not run by rules and regulations and by misaligned structures and systems. So they're very empowered to be very creative with their customers in trying to add as much value as they possibly can. And the numbers of the Net Promoting Score reveal that. So if you're looking at, say, weak financial numbers, you want to understand the roots that produce those. That's why it's so important to do XQ and Net Promoting Score. And also an approach toward distinctive contribution, because unless you have a balance between the body, mind, heart, and spirit, it will not really have a synergistic impact on that organization. And what you want is synergy, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Yes, sir. Am I focusing on anything particular in my current research? I'm working on 10 books. And the overall book is called The Third Alternative, because each one of the 10 represent an approach to producing a third alternative. And we have research teams on every one of the 10 projects. And we're gathering data. One of them is with my daughter, called Live Life in Crescendo, meaning the most important work you'll ever do is always ahead of you. It's never behind you. So don't ever retire. You might retire from a job, but don't retire from making significant contributions. You know what that develops? Eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. Hans Selye out of Montreal is the expert on stress. And eustress is necessary to keep your immune system strong and your ability to fight disease through the immune system very, very strong. And people with eustress live a lot longer than people without it. It's meaningful contribution. The key to life is not accumulation, it's contribution. Yes, sir.
You mentioned a book for attorneys. Do you have something currently that, sorry. Dr. Covey, you mentioned a book for attorneys. Do you have any plans for something that pertains to risk management, insurance, finance, those areas?
Yeah, we do. We're trying to focus on how they too can help produce third alternative solutions so that there is a bonding between the customer and the supplier of that kind of help. There's a bonding that takes place whenever you create something that is new and different. Put up the 2 steps to creating third alternatives. The first step is, would you be willing to search for a solution that is better than what either one of us have proposed? Would you agree to a simple ground rule? Here's the Indian talking stick approach. No one can make his or her point until they have restated the other person's point to his or her satisfaction. Now, if you can get those 2 steps operating, you'll produce third alternative solutions. And when you produce third alternative solutions as a financial advisor or counselor, or in any issue in your organization, you're helping to create a culturally empowered approach toward the unleashing of creative energy inside people. Yes, sir.
Do you have an approach to public education, primary education, secondary education? It seems that a lot of what you're talking about is really needed, the unused resource in schools today.
I even told President Bush that just before he left office. I said, I'll tell you why No Child Left Behind is not working. It's because it only creates in the mind of the teacher how to teach the kids how to take tests. And every time I say that to a group of educators, they all applaud. Because that's the real case. It doesn't deal with character, it doesn't deal with skills. So we developed an approach called the Leader in Me for educators. The other day I was speaking on it in Florida, and instead of my giving my speech, I had the kids give speeches instead, and it blew the audience away. Their level of competence, their courage was just totally amazing to the audience. And then I interviewed each one of them. Are you a leader? I am. What do you lead? My life. What else do you lead? I'm in charge of the manuals for the second grade or whatever. And my son, Sean, wrote a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And it applies the whole concept of synergistic, creative communication to high school students. And my son Stephen wrote this book called The Speed of Trust, showing that when trust is high, costs go down and speed goes up. And he's traveling throughout the world as well. I've had the opportunity to train 38 heads of state. In fact, the other day, I was in the Dominican Republic training the president and his wife and his cabinet. And then I went to the legislature, where the confidence in the legislature was down to 8% by the public, which is much lower than it is in our country. And they're just fighting constantly, nitpicking each other. So I taught Indian talking stick communication, and I said, if you are willing to utilize this, if it makes sense to you, to restate the other person's point to his or her satisfaction before you make your own, stand, look at the other side of the aisle, and applaud them. And they did. I haven't followed up to see what's happening, but I'm going to be there in about a week's time. And I'll try to find out if they literally did that and produce third alternative solutions. Yes, sir.
Is there a microphone? Oh, there we go. Yeah, quick question. Based on the frameworks you presented, do you feel that sort of the measure of success in the public markets needs to change as well, i.e. sort of just profits produced for shareholders? I mean, given sort of all the knowledge worker frameworks you've
I definitely think it should. Okay. I think it should include XQ, Net Promoting Score, and distinctive contribution. If you have all four, you're dealing with body, mind, heart, and spirit. Otherwise, you deal with only financial accounting and earnings per share for the shareholder. And we're trying to do that in my company. Yes, sir.
Yeah, following up on that last point, do you see value in the current methods companies use to do surveys, to conduct surveys of employees?
I think the curve method is an empirical approach that is very valuable. And if you'll notice that both financial accounting, XQ, and net promoting score, as well as distinctive contribution, all can be put into a curve. I think there's value in seeing a curve, and because essentially the 90%, the top 10%, and the average are expressions of a curve. As I mentioned, the average score in the top of the curve is about 3.5 rather than 9 or 10. Yes, ma'am. Here's a microphone for you.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. In your work and in your research, what do you find most hopeful and promising about old economy, new economy, the people participating in it?
I think the most encouraging and affirming thing to me is to see cultural empowerment, where people are literally involved in the process of making decisions within the context of principles and strategic goals. That to me is the most satisfying thing to see. But you know what? You find it very seldom. Really. The industrial age paradigm is so deeply enmeshed and embedded in most people's minds and hearts that they become codependent upon it.
Well, this is really the root of my question. What do you see hopeful about that change?
I think what's hopeful about it, I think things are changing, is that the competitive forces in the marketplace will drive what I'm talking about, because it succeeds where the other simply deals with financial accounting and does not succeed. Unless you understand the roots that produce those fruits, you're working on the wrong initiatives. So by getting all 4 forms of information to people, you'll find that people who are flaky, unprincipled, who are lazy, who live on yesterday's productivity and they're not producing today, cannot survive that culture. They're rooted out, including formal leaders, bosses, in the traditional sense, industrial age sense.
Speaking about the industrial age, recently Mark Hurt was let go by HP, even though that he had record profits. Do you see that as a validation of what you're speaking about today in regards to the old industrial age management paradigm?
I do think so. I think that HP is getting more and more into cultural accounting and also net promoting score accounting, so that they have a lot of information regarding how their customers see them and how their business partners see them, as well as their associates. I don't think we should ever call people employees. We should call them associates and partners, colleagues, and in a complementary team sense, so that strengths are productive and weaknesses are made irrelevant to the strengths of other people. I do agree with what you're saying here. I think that there hasn't been enough information about HP's cultural matrix and indices, as well as net promoting score. And I think the leading organizations in every industry are moving more and more toward the knowledge worker age and away from the industrial age approach. And the cultural empowerment necessitates everyone buying into the purpose and the principles. In fact, I've learned that if you can involve enough people deeply and sincerely, that they'll come up with mission statements that are amazing, that are based on principles and that serve very distinctive purposes of the organization.
Thank you.
You want me to finish? Okay. I would close with 2 quotes. This first one is Mother Teresa. We were just in Calcutta. Can you put that quote up? This is the longer one. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you win some false friends and some true friends. Succeed anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world your best anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. The other one is the French philosopher Teilhard Chardin, who said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Thank you so much.